My hands were covered in flour when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I was making Robert's favorite apple pie, something he'd done every Sunday for 30 years, even though he'd been gone for 2. Carol's name flashed on the screen with a video attachment. I wiped my hands clean and opened it, expecting maybe a funny clip from her granddaughter's soccer game. Instead, I saw my 28-year-old daughter Amanda at what looked like a house party, surrounded by laughing friends. Her voice cut through the background noise like a knife. "I can't stand her. She makes me sick. I wish she'd just disappear." The room erupted in laughter and knowing nods, as if my existence were some joke they'd all agreed on. My phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering against the granite counter. Another message from Carol appeared immediately. "There's more audio, but are you sure you want to hear it?" I stood frozen in my Dallas kitchen, staring at Carol's message while cinnamon and nutmeg scented the air around me. The pie filling bubbled softly in the oven, but I couldn't move. My daughter's words echoed in my mind. I wish she'd just disappear. After 65 years of life, 43 years of marriage, and 28 years of motherhood, I thought I understood heartbreak. I was wrong. Against every instinct screaming at me to stop, I clicked the audio file. Amanda's voice came through crystal clear now, more deliberate and calculating than the casual cruelty of the video. She's been getting worse since Dad died. Always calling, always needing something. My therapist says she's emotionally manipulating me. Sometimes I think she fakes being sick just to get attention. I sank onto my kitchen stool, gripping the counter for support. Amanda had a therapist? Since when? And what did she mean about me calling all the time? I checked my phone records right there, scrolling through weeks of call history, twice a week, maybe 3 times at most. Normal conversations about her work at the marketing firm, her apartment in Uptown, her dating life that she rarely wanted to discuss. The audio continued, and I heard an unfamiliar voice ask, "Have you thought about cutting contact?" My stomach lurched as Amanda responded without hesitation. "Every day. But she controls my inheritance. Dad left everything to her first, then to me when she dies. It's like she's holding me hostage." The words hit me like physical blows. Robert had indeed structured our estate that way, but only to ensure my security as his widow. Amanda would inherit substantial assets when I passed, including the house, his life insurance, and his share of the commercial properties downtown. But holding her hostage, the girl had never wanted for anything. Wed paid for her college, helped with her first apartment, supported her through 2 career changes. Other voices joined the conversation, and I realized this wasn't a spontaneous rant. This was a planned discussion among friends who'd clearly heard this before. One woman said, "My mom went through the same thing with my grandmother. Some people just can't let go of being needed." Another added, "At least your mom's only 65. Some of these elderly parents drag it out for decades. Elderly parents, at 65, after 30 years of teaching high school English, after raising a daughter who graduated summa cum laude, after nursing my husband through his final illness, I had become an elderly parent who couldn't let go." Amanda's voice grew more animated. "The worst part is how she acts so helpless sometimes. Last month she called me crying because the cable went out during her show. I had to drive over there at 9 at night to reset the router. It's like she forgets how to be an adult when something goes wrong." I remembered that night. The cable had gone out during the series finale of a show Robert and I had watched together. It'd been emotional, yes, but not helpless. Id called the cable company first, spent an hour on hold, and only called Amanda when they said they couldn't send a technician until the next week. 20 minutes after the audio ended, I was still sitting in my kitchen when Carol's key turned in the front door. Wed exchanged house keys years ago for emergencies, but Shed never used hers without calling first. "Jean." Her voice was gentle, cautious. She found me at the kitchen island, my hands flat on the granite surface, staring at my phone. "How long have you known?" I asked. Carol pulled out the stool next to mine and sat down heavily. At 72, she moved more slowly than she once did, but her mind was sharp as ever. I was at the party helping my niece Jennifer move some furniture. I overheard the conversation and started recording when I realized what was happening. "I've been debating for 3 days whether to tell you." 3 days. For 3 days, Carol had carried this knowledge while I'd gone about my normal life, planning Sunday dinner, tending my garden, completely unaware that my daughter saw me as a burden she couldn't wait to escape. "There's something else," Carol said, her voice even more hesitant. This wasn't the first time. After I heard this, I started asking around discreetly. Some of our mutual friends from church, the book club, people we've known for years. "Amanda's been saying things about you at other gatherings too." The pie timer went off, its cheerful ding absurdly normal in the midst of my collapsing world. Carol got up to remove the pie from the oven, moving with the familiar efficiency of someone who'd helped in my kitchen 1,000 times. The smell of cinnamon and apples filled the room, but it might as well have been sawdust. "What kind of things?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Carol set the pie on the cooling rack and turned back to me. "She's been telling people you're having memory issues, that you get confused about things, repeat yourself, have trouble managing basic tasks. She makes it sound like she's worried about you, like a good daughter should be. But the way she describes it, Jean, she makes you sound like you're losing your mind." The next morning, I woke before dawn and lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every interaction I'd had with Amanda over the past 6 months. Had I been clingy, demanding, confused? I replayed conversations, analyzed tone of voice, searched for evidence that I'd become the pathetic figure my daughter described to her friends. By 7:30, I'd convinced myself to call my sister Patricia in Phoenix. We'd always been close, talking weekly since Robert's death, but I realized I hadn't heard from her in over a month. When she answered, her voice carried an odd formality. "Jean, I'm glad you called. I've actually been worried about you. Amanda mentioned you've been having some memory issues lately, getting confused about things. She said you accused the mailman of stealing packages that were actually delivered to the wrong address." I sat up straighter in bed, my heart pounding. "Patricia, that never happened. I've never accused anyone of stealing packages." A pause. "She also said you've been calling her multiple times a day, sometimes forgetting you'd already talked. She's concerned about you living alone in that big house. I call her twice a week, maybe 3 times, and I've never forgotten our conversations." I was fully awake now, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Patricia, when exactly did Amanda tell you these things?" "She called me about 3 weeks ago. She seemed so worried, Jean. She said you'd been having these episodes where you'd get confused about what day it was, or you'd start a story and then lose track of what you were saying. She asked if I'd noticed anything when we talk. Amanda had been systematically poisoning my relationship with my own sister." I thought back to our last conversation 3 weeks ago. Patricia had seemed distracted, asking careful questions about how I was feeling, whether I was eating well, if I was getting enough sleep. At the time, I'd thought she was being considerate. Now I realized she'd been evaluating my mental state. After I hung up with Patricia, I called my neighbor Dorothy, who lived 2 houses down and had become a good friend since Robert's death. We often walked together in the evenings, sharing neighborhood gossip and comparing notes on our gardens. "Oh, Jean, dear, I was just thinking about you," Dorothy said. "Amanda stopped by about a month ago when you weren't home. She seemed so concerned about you. She mentioned you'd been having some trouble lately." My mouth went dry. "What kind of trouble?" "Well, she said you'd been forgetting to pay bills, leaving the stove on, little things that worried her. She asked if Eid noticed anything unusual when I see you around the neighborhood. She was very sweet about it, just a daughter looking out for her mother. Amanda had visited my neighbors without telling me. Shed planted seeds of concern about my mental state with people who saw me regularly, people whose observations might carry weight if questions ever arose about my competency. I spent the rest of the morning making careful phone calls to other friends and family members. The pattern became clear quickly. Amanda had been making strategic contacts over the past several months, expressing worry about my well-being, describing incidents that had never happened, painting a picture of a woman in cognitive decline. Mrs. Henderson from church mentioned that Amanda had asked her to keep an eye on me during services, to make sure I wasn't getting confused during communion. My cousin Janet, in Austin, said Amanda had called asking about signs of early dementia, claiming Id told her the same story 3 times during one visit. Every story was plausible, the kind of thing that could happen to anyone experiencing stress or grief. But none of it had actually happened. Amanda had been carefully constructing a narrative of my mental deterioration, and she'd been building it for months. By noon, I was pacing my living room, my mind racing. Why would Amanda do this? The inheritance explanation from the party audio made some sense, but we weren't talking about immediate wealth. I was healthy, active, and only 65. Even with a generous life expectancy, Amanda might wait 20 or 30 years to inherit. Then I remembered Robert's business investments. Had put significant money into a commercial development project downtown, something that was supposed to pay out big returns within the next few years. The project required ongoing investment decisions, and as his widow, I held the controlling interest. If something happened to my mental capacity, Amanda would need to make those decisions as my guardian or conservator. I pulled out Robert's files from the home office and spread them across the dining room table. The development deal was more complex than Id realized. There were decision points coming up within the next few months, choices that could double our investment or lose everything. Someone with control over those decisions could potentially make or lose millions of dollars. As I read through the paperwork, I found something that made my blood run cold. Amanda had been given power of attorney for my financial affairs last year when Id had minor surgery to remove a benign cyst. It was supposed to be temporary, just in case something happened during the procedure. I'd forgotten to revoke it. That meant Amanda could access information about my bank accounts, investment portfolios, and business holdings. She could see exactly how much money was at stake and when critical decisions needed to be made. She couldn't move money or make major transactions without additional steps, but she could monitor everything. I called my bank and discovered that Amanda had accessed my account information as recently as last week. She'd been tracking my spending, my savings, my financial habits. She knew exactly what I was worth and how I managed my money. The phone rang, startling me out of my research. Amanda's name appeared on the caller ID, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't want to answer a call from my daughter. "Hi, Mom," she said brightly when I picked up. "How are you feeling today? How are you feeling today? Not how are you, but how are you feeling?" The question implied that I might not be feeling well, that my state of being was something to be monitored and evaluated. "I'm fine, Amanda. Just doing some paperwork." "Paperwork? Mom, you can ask me to help with that stuff. You don't need to stress yourself with complicated financial things." There it was, the subtle suggestion that financial matters were too complex for my aging brain, that I needed help with tasks I'd been managing independently for decades. Imperfectly capable of reviewing my own documents, Amanda. A slight pause. "Of course you are, Mom. I just meant that if you ever want a second opinion or help organizing anything, I'm here for you. That's what daughters are for, right?" After we hung up, I sat in my dining room, surrounded by Robert's papers, understanding for the first time that my own daughter saw me as an obstacle to be managed, a problem to be solved. The woman Eid, raised, loved, and supported, was systematically destroying my reputation and planning to take control of my life. But Amanda had made one crucial mistake. Shed underestimated the woman who'd taught high school students for 30 years, who'd learned to spot manipulation and deception from teenagers who thought they'd invented both. If my daughter wanted to play games with my life, she was about to learn that I hadn't forgotten how to fight back. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my best navy suit and drove to Harold Stevens' law office downtown. Harold had been Robert's lawyer for 15 years and had handled our estate planning. If anyone could help me understand the legal implications of Amanda's behavior, it would be him. But when I walked into Harold's office, his demeanor was strangely formal, almost cold. This was a man who'd shared dinner at our house, who'd called me by my first name since Robert's funeral, who'd always treated me like family. "Jean," he said, standing behind his desk rather than coming around to greet me, "I have to ask, are you feeling all right? Your daughter came to see me 3 weeks ago. She was quite concerned about some decisions you've been making lately." The world tilted slightly. Amanda had gotten to my own lawyer. "What decisions?" I asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Harold pulled out a manila folder, handling it like evidence in a criminal case. "She mentioned that you've been giving money to telephone scammers, that you're considering selling the house to move somewhere, inappropriate for someone your age. She was worried about your judgment." I stared at him. "Harold, I haven't received any scam calls. I haven't given money to anyone, and I've never mentioned selling my house or moving anywhere. Where would you get these ideas?" He opened the folder and pulled out several printed emails. "She showed me these correspondence from you. They seemed concerning." He handed me the printouts, and I read them with growing horror. The emails were rambling, confused, mentioning people I'd never heard of, and events that had never happened. One talked about giving $5,000 to a charity that needed help with hurricane victims in Kansas. Kansas doesn't have hurricanes. Another discussed my plans to move to a retirement community in Florida because I was tired of managing the house alone. "Harold, I never wrote these emails. I've never seen them before in my life." His expression grew more worried. "Jean, these came from your email address. They're in your typical writing style, with personal details that only you would know." I studied the emails more carefully. They did sound like me in some ways, referencing things like Robert's favorite coffee shop and my Tuesday book club. But the content was wrong. The thoughts disjointed in a way that didn't match how I actually communicated. "Someone created these," I said firmly. "Someone with access to my personal information, but not someone who knows how I actually think or write." Harold's expression suggested he thought this was exactly the kind of paranoid thinking he'd been warned to expect. "Amanda also mentioned that you've been making concerning phone calls at odd hours, forgetting appointments you've made with friends. She brought documentation of some troubling behaviors." Documentation. Amanda had been building a case against me, creating a paper trail that would support claims of mental incompetence. She consulted with another attorney as well. Harold continued. "Someone who specializes in protecting family assets when elderly parents begin making poor financial decisions." My stomach dropped. "What attorney?" "Thomas Bradley. He handles elder care law, guardianship proceedings, that sort of thing." Amanda was asking about the legal process for protecting vulnerable adults from exploitation. The implication was crystal clear. Amanda wasn't just gossiping about my supposed mental decline, she was researching the legal steps necessary to have me declared incompetent and gain control of my financial affairs. I left Harold's office feeling dizzy and disoriented, not from any mental decline, but from the realization that my daughter had been planning this for months. She'd systematically contacted my family, friends, neighbors, doctor, and lawyers, building a comprehensive case that I was losing my mental faculties. That evening, I sat at my computer and searched for Thomas Bradley's law firm. His website featured testimonials from grateful families who'd used his services to protect aging parents from financial scammers and poor decision-making. One case study described helping an adult daughter gain conservatorship over her 70-year-old mother who'd been giving money to strangers and making impulsive, major purchases. I created a fake email account and contacted his office, posing as someone concerned about an aging parent. The response came quickly, outlining the process for proving mental incompetency and gaining legal guardianship. The steps Amanda would need to take were clearly laid out: documented evidence of confused behavior, medical evaluations showing cognitive decline, testimony from family and friends about concerning changes, and proof of financial vulnerability. Amanda had been working through this checklist methodically. She'd planted evidence with family and friends, created documentation of concerning behavior, and now she was presumably working on the medical evaluation component. I drove past Amanda's apartment building that night, parking across the street where I could see the visitor parking area. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to understand the scope of what I was dealing with. Around 8 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the visitor space and a man in a business suit got out. Even from a distance, I recognized him from the photo on Thomas Bradley's website. He stayed for over an hour. When he left, he was carrying a briefcase and what looked like a folder of documents. Amanda was meeting with the elder care attorney regularly, providing him with evidence of my supposed incompetency and discussing strategy for gaining legal control over my affairs. I followed Thomas Bradley at a safe distance as he drove back to his downtown office. He worked late, lights on in his office window until after 10 o'clock. This wasn't a casual consultation, this was active legal preparation for a guardianship proceeding. The next day, I called Thomas Bradley's office directly, claiming to be researching options for my own aging mother. The receptionist was chatty and helpful, mentioning that Mr. Bradley had extensive experience with cases where adult children needed to step in quickly to protect family assets from poor decision-making by elderly parents. "We see it all the time," she said sympathetically. "Children who love their parents but have to watch them make dangerous choices. Mr. Bradley specializes in helping families navigate these difficult situations with dignity and compassion." When I asked about timelines, she explained that emergency conservatorship proceedings could move quite quickly when there was clear evidence of incompetency and immediate financial risk. With the right documentation, legal guardianship could be established within a matter of weeks. I hung up understanding that Amanda's timeline was accelerating. The property development deal that Robert had invested in was approaching a critical decision point. If Amanda could have me declared incompetent within the next 60 days, she could make the investment choices herself. Choices that could potentially double the family wealth or lose everything. But this wasn't just about money. Amanda was planning to take away my independence, my home, my right to make my own decisions. She was going to have me declared mentally unfit and then institutionalize me while she controlled every aspect of my life and finances. As I sat in my car outside Thomas Bradley's office building, watching him work late into the evening on what I now knew was my case, I realized that my daughter wasn't just betraying me. She was trying to erase me entirely, and I was running out of time to stop her. The next morning, I called Dr. Martinez's office and requested a comprehensive medical evaluation. If Amanda was building a case for my mental incompetency, I needed current medical evidence that I was mentally sharp and physically healthy. Dr. Martinez, who'd been my physician for 12 years, seemed surprised by my request. "Your daughter called last week asking about cognitive testing options. She mentioned you've seemed disoriented during recent visits." Another piece of Amanda's strategy revealed itself. She was laying groundwork with my doctor, preparing him to find evidence of cognitive decline when she brought me in for evaluation. "I'd like a complete workup," I told Dr. Martinez. "Memory tests, cognitive assessments, everything. I want a full picture of my mental and physical health." During the appointment, Dr. Martinez reviewed my recent medical records with unusual attention to detail. "These are interesting," he said, pointing to blood work from my last visit 3 months earlier. "Your medication levels were unusually high. Are you taking more than prescribed?" I wasn't taking any regular medications except daily vitamins and occasional ibuprofen for arthritis. "What medications are you referring to?" He pulled up computer records on his screen. "It shows here that you reported memory issues during that visit and asked about increasing your blood pressure medication dosage to help with concentration." I stared at him. "Dr. Martinez, I don't take blood pressure medication, and I never reported memory issues. I came in for my annual physical, and everything was normal." His frown deepened as he scrolled through the electronic records. "That's strange. There are several phone calls logged from you over the past few months, reporting various symptoms: confusion, disorientation, difficulty remembering recent events." "I never made those calls." "When did they occur?" He checked the dates. Every single call had been made on a day when Amanda had visited my house. Days when Shed insisted on making coffee or tea, when Eid felt unusually drowsy afterward and attributed it to grief, fatigue, or simply getting older. "I need copies of all my medical records," I said. "Everything from the past 6 months." That afternoon, armed with my medical files, I drove to a private laboratory across town. Id brought the coffee maker from my kitchen, the one Amanda always used when she visited, claiming she made better coffee than I did. The lab technician was professional but curious about my request. "You want us to test for what exactly?" "Any foreign substances, particularly medications that might cause drowsiness, confusion, or memory problems." The results came back 2 days later. The coffee maker tested positive for traces of alprazolam, a powerful anti-anxiety medication that could cause exactly the symptoms Amanda had been reporting to my doctor. The levels suggested regular, repeated contamination over several weeks. My own daughter had been drugging me. I sat in my car outside the laboratory, staring at the test results, trying to process what this meant. Amanda hadn't just been lying about my mental state, she'd been actively creating the symptoms she was describing. Every time Id felt groggy or confused after her visits, every time Id struggled to focus or remember details clearly, it was because she'd given me drugs without my knowledge or consent. This wasn't just emotional manipulation or financial scheming. This was assault. This was a felony. I called Carol and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere public where we could talk without being overheard. When I showed her the lab results, her face went pale. "Jean, this is criminal. You have to call the police." "Not yet," I said. "I need to understand the full scope of what she's doing. If I move too quickly, she might destroy evidence or accelerate her plans." I hired Sarah Chen, a private investigator who specialized in elder abuse cases. Sarah was a former police detective in her 40s, sharp-eyed and methodical. When I explained the situation, she nodded grimly. "I see this more often than you'd think," she said. "Adult children who decide their parents are obstacles to their inheritance. The drugging component makes this especially serious." Sarah's investigation revealed layers of deception I hadn't discovered on my own. Amanda had been using social media strategically, posting carefully chosen photos of me looking tired or confused. Photos taken after Shed drugged me with captions expressing concern about my rough days and memory lapses. Shed built a public record of my supposed decline that stretched back months. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing me printouts of Amanda's Facebook posts. She's been documenting every visit, every phone call, every interaction, but only sharing the concerning parts. To anyone reading these posts, you look like a woman in serious cognitive decline. The posts were manipulative masterpieces. Amanda described coming over to help Mom with some bills and finding me confused about what day it was. She shared a photo of me looking tired and disoriented, taken after Shed drugged my coffee, with the caption, "Worried about these memory lapses, getting harder to have normal conversations." Sarah had also traced Amanda's phone records and discovered extensive communication with Marcus Wright, Robert's former business partner who was still involved in the downtown development project. Based on Amanda's reports about my mental state, Marcus had been preparing to work exclusively with her on future investment decisions. "She's positioned herself as your inevitable successor," Sarah explained. "Everyone in your financial circle believes you're becoming incompetent and that she's the responsible daughter stepping in to help." The most damaging discovery came when Sarah accessed public records of legal consultations. Amanda had been meeting with Thomas Bradley for 8 weeks, much longer than Id realized. They'd prepared a comprehensive guardianship petition that included sworn statements from family members, medical concerns reported to my doctor, and documented evidence of concerning behavior. "They're ready to file," Sarah said. Based on the timeline, I'd guess they're waiting for one more piece of medical evidence, probably cognitive testing that shows decline. Once they have that, they can request emergency guardianship and have you removed from your home within days. I thought about the property development decision deadline, now just 6 weeks away. Amanda needed control of those assets before the investment window closed. Everything was timing out perfectly for her plan. "There's something else," Sarah said, hesitating slightly. "We traced some of her other activities over the past few months. She's been visiting assisted living facilities, touring memory care units. She's been preparing a place to put you once she gains guardianship." The final piece of Amanda's plan became clear. She wasn't just going to take control of my finances, she was going to have me institutionalized in a memory care facility, where I'd be medicated and isolated while she controlled every aspect of my life. As I sat in Sarah's office, looking at the evidence of my daughter's systematic plan to destroy my life, I realized that confronting her directly would be useless. She'd been preparing for months, building an unassailable case that I was mentally incompetent. If I accused her of drugging me or lying about my condition, it would only be seen as paranoid delusions from a woman losing her grip on reality. But Amanda had made one crucial error in her planning. Shed assumed I was exactly what Shed told everyone I was, a helpless, confused elderly woman who would never fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. I spent 3 sleepless nights planning my counterattack. Direct confrontation was impossible. Amanda's narrative was too well established, her evidence too comprehensive. Anyone I approached would see an aging woman making wild accusations against her devoted daughter. But I had one advantage Amanda hadn't anticipated. I understood exactly what she was doing and why. If she wanted me to disappear, it'd give her exactly what she asked for. I opened new bank accounts at institutions Amanda didn't know about, quietly transferring enough money to support myself for several months. I arranged to stay with my cousin Beth in Colorado, someone Amanda had never met and wouldn't think to contact. Most importantly, I coordinated with Sarah to document everything Amanda did once I vanished. On a Tuesday morning that seemed perfectly ordinary, I left my house carrying only my purse, as if going to the grocery store. I drove to the Kroger, where I always shopped, parked my car in the lot, and walked out the back entrance, where Beth was waiting in her rental car. I left my cell phone on the front seat of my car, along with my house keys and a grocery list, creating the appearance that Eid simply vanished between the parking lot and the store entrance. Beth drove me to Dallas Love Field, where I caught a flight to Denver using a ticket purchased with cash. By the time the grocery store manager called police about an abandoned car in their lot, I was 30,000 feet above Texas, watching my old life disappear beneath the clouds. The plan was cruel in its simplicity. Amanda had been building a case that I was mentally unstable and prone to confused, dangerous behavior. My sudden disappearance would seem to confirm everything she'd been telling people. Here was an elderly woman with cognitive problems who'd wandered away and gotten lost, proving beyond doubt that she needed immediate legal protection. From Beth's guest bedroom in Boulder, I watched Amanda's performance unfold through Sarah's surveillance and social media monitoring. Within hours of the police report, Amanda was at the grocery store, tears streaming down her face as she spoke to local news reporters about her vulnerable mother with memory problems, who might be lost and confused somewhere in the city. "She's been struggling lately," Amanda told the cameras, her voice breaking with what seemed like genuine anguish. "Sometimes she gets disoriented, forgets where she is. I'm terrified she's out there alone, not understanding what's happening to her." The performance was flawless. Amanda organized search parties, created a Facebook page called Find Jean Patterson, and gave heartbreaking interviews about the challenges of caring for a parent with cognitive decline. The community response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people shared her posts, offered to help search, and donated money for professional search teams. But Sarah's cameras captured what the public didn't see. Between search coordination meetings, Amanda was visiting Thomas Bradley's office to accelerate the guardianship proceedings. She filed for emergency conservatorship, claiming my disappearance proved I was mentally incompetent and dangerous to myself. The fact that she wandered away from a familiar location without her phone or keys demonstrates the severity of her condition. Amanda's petition read, "She requires immediate legal protection and supervised care for her own safety." Within a week, Amanda had gained temporary control of my bank accounts to protect assets, while Jean is missing and unable to manage her affairs. She'd also begun clearing out my house, ostensibly to search for clues about where I might have gone, but actually removing items she wanted to keep or sell. Sarah's documentation was thorough. We had video of Amanda loading furniture into a moving truck while tearfully telling reporters she just wanted her mother to come home safely. We recorded her phone conversations with Thomas Bradley, discussing strategy for making the temporary conservatorship permanent, even if I was found. Most damning of all, we captured Amanda's reaction when she thought no one was watching. After a particularly emotional television interview where she begged for my safe return, Sarah's camera caught Amanda in the parking lot, checking her watch and making a phone call. "It's been 6 days. How much longer before we can move to permanent guardianship?" She wasn't searching for her missing mother. She was waiting for enough time to pass to legally declare me dead or permanently incompetent. The property development decision deadline loomed closer, and I watched Amanda position herself to make investment choices that could determine the family financial future. Marcus Wright, convinced that I was either dead or mentally incapable, prepared to work exclusively with Amanda on decisions involving millions of dollars. She's going for the highest risk, highest reward option, Sarah reported after monitoring Amanda's meetings with financial advisors. "If it pays off, she'll double the family wealth. If it doesn't, she'll lose everything. But since she believes she's spending your money rather than her inheritance, she's willing to gamble it all." From my hiding place in Colorado, I watched my daughter navigate interviews and search coordination with practiced ease, accepting sympathy and support from a community that saw her as a devoted daughter facing every parent's worst nightmare. She attended prayer services for my safe return, coordinated with police investigators, and maintained the perfect facade of a heartbroken child. But late at night, when she thought no one was watching, Amanda was celebrating. Sarah's surveillance showed her at upscale restaurants, shopping for expensive clothes, and house hunting in neighborhoods far above her current financial means. She was spending money she didn't yet legally have, confident that her plan had succeeded. After 2 weeks, I had everything I needed. Amanda's behavior during my disappearance revealed her true character more clearly than years of secret recordings could have accomplished. When she thought I was gone forever, she'd shown the world exactly who she really was. It was time to come back from the dead and reclaim my life. On a gray Monday morning, exactly 2 weeks after my disappearance, I walked into Harold Stevens' office where Amanda was meeting with Thomas Bradley to finalize permanent conservatorship papers. Sarah had arranged the timing perfectly. Amanda was about to sign documents giving her complete control over my estate and financial affairs. The receptionist's startled gasp alerted the entire office to my arrival. Through Harold's glass conference room doors, I could see Amanda's face transform from confusion to shock, to something approaching panic, as she realized her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. I entered the conference room with Sarah behind me, carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Amanda stood frozen beside the mahogany table, her hand still holding the pen she'd been about to use to sign the conservatorship papers. "Mom," she said, her voice pitched too high with forced excitement. "Thank God you're all right. I was so worried. We've been searching everywhere for you." But her eyes told a different story. Where there should have been relief and joy at seeing her supposedly beloved mother safe, there was calculation and fear. Amanda was already trying to figure out how to salvage her plan. "I know everything," I said simply, settling into the chair across from her. Amanda's mask slipped for just a moment before she recovered. "Know what? Mom, you've been missing for 2 weeks. The police have been searching. I've organized volunteers. The whole community has been looking for you. Where have you been? Are you hurt? You must be so confused." Thomas Bradley cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mrs. Patterson, we're all very relieved to see you're safe. Your daughter has been extremely concerned about your welfare. Perhaps we should contact the authorities to let them know you've been found, and then arrange for medical evaluation to make sure you're unharmed." Medical evaluation. Even now, they were maneuvering to have me declared incompetent, to claim that my disappearance proved I needed legal guardianship. I opened Sarah's briefcase and began laying evidence on the conference table. Laboratory results showing drug contamination in my coffee maker, medical records proving Amanda had made false reports to my doctor, documentation of her systematic lying to family and friends, and photographic evidence of her behavior during my supposed disappearance. "This shows traces of alprazolam in my coffee maker," I said, pointing to the lab results. "Someone has been drugging me regularly for months, creating the symptoms of confusion and memory loss that you've been reporting to medical professionals." Amanda's face went white, but she rallied quickly. "Mom, that's impossible. You must be confused about what those papers mean. Maybe you mixed up your medications somehow. You know you've been having memory problems lately." I continued laying out evidence. Printed emails she'd created using my name, phone records showing her unauthorized access to my medical information, surveillance photos of her meetings with Thomas Bradley spanning 8 weeks, and most damning, recordings of her conversations during my disappearance, where she discussed making my conservatorship permanent. Thomas Bradley studied the documents with growing alarm. As an attorney, he recognized the legal implications immediately. "Mrs. Patterson," he said to Amanda, "these allegations are extremely serious. If any of this is accurate, it's all lies." Amanda interrupted, her voice rising. "Can't you see what's happening here?" She's having some kind of paranoid breakdown. This is exactly the kind of delusional thinking I've been worried about. But her protests sounded desperate now, especially when I played the audio recording of her original party conversation, the one that had started this entire investigation. Amanda's voice filled the conference room. "I can't stand her. She makes me sick. I wish she'd just disappear." Then the follow-up audio where she described me as manipulative and discussed the inheritance structure that left everything to her upon my death. "I have 2 weeks of surveillance footage documenting your behavior while I was missing," I continued. "Video of you moving furniture out of my house while giving interviews about hoping for my safe return. Phone conversations where you discussed permanent conservatorship timelines with Mr. Bradley. Financial records showing you accessed my bank accounts and began spending money you hadn't legally inherited." Harold Stevens, who'd been silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. "Amanda, is this true? Did you provide false information about your mother's mental condition?" Amanda looked around the room, realizing that her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling beyond repair. The evidence was overwhelming, documented by professionals, and impossible to explain away as the delusions of a confused elderly woman. In her desperation, Amanda's mask finally fell completely away. "You can't prove any of this. Who's going to believe you over me? Everyone thinks you're losing your mind because that's what you are, a crazy old woman who can't accept that her own daughter doesn't love her." The words hung in the air like poison. Thomas Bradley and Harold Stevens exchanged glances, understanding that they'd witnessed Amanda's true character emerging under pressure. But Id prepared for this moment. Sarah stepped forward and activated a small recording device that had been capturing everything since Wed entered the room. "Actually," she said calmly, "we can prove all of it. And Mrs. Patterson just provided an excellent example of the emotional manipulation she's been using against her mother for months." Amanda realized she'd been recorded making threats and admissions that supported every allegation in my evidence file. Her legal position had just become untenable, and everyone in the room knew it. Your daughter," she said, making one final desperate appeal. "You can't do this to me. Dad would want you to forgive me. Family is supposed to forgive each other." I looked at this woman Id raised from birth. This child Id loved and supported and sacrificed for, and felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. "Your father would want me to protect myself from someone who tried to steal my life while I was still living it." Thomas Bradley quietly gathered his papers and stood to leave. "I'll be withdrawing from this case immediately. Mrs. Patterson, you should probably consult with a criminal defense attorney." He looked at Amanda with professional disgust. "What you've described here could constitute elder abuse, fraud, and assault." As Amanda sat in the conference room chair, surrounded by evidence of her crimes and facing the collapse of her elaborate deception, I realized that my disappearance had accomplished exactly what Id hoped. It had forced her to reveal her true character when she thought she was safe from consequences. She'd gambled everything on a plan that required me to remain weak, confused, and helpless. But Id spent 30 years teaching teenagers who thought they could manipulate adults, and Id learned long ago that the best defense against deception is patience, evidence, and the willingness to fight back when the moment is right. Amanda had wished I would disappear. Instead, she'd made herself vanish not physically, but morally and legally, destroying the daughter Id thought I knew and revealing the stranger she'd actually become. The news of Amanda's elaborate deception spread through our community like wildfire. The Facebook page she'd created to coordinate searches for her missing mother became a forum where people shared their shock and disbelief at the evidence of systematic manipulation. Friends and neighbors who'd donated time and money to search efforts felt betrayed and angry at being manipulated. Within 48 hours of our confrontation in Harold's office, Amanda was arrested on multiple felony charges. elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and assault with a controlled substance. The drugging evidence alone carried serious criminal penalties in Texas, but the systematic nature of her deception elevated the charges significantly. Local television stations that had featured Amanda's tearful pleas for my safe return now covered her arrest with the same thorough attention. The contrast between her public persona as a devoted daughter and the evidence of her calculated cruelty made for compelling news coverage. Detective Rodriguez, who'd investigated my disappearance, told reporters that it was one of the most sophisticated cases of elder abuse she'd encountered. The defendant created an elaborate false narrative about her mother's mental condition over several months, supported by forged documents, false medical reports, and systematic drugging to create symptoms of cognitive decline. I used the media attention as an opportunity to raise awareness about elder abuse, particularly the kind of emotional and financial manipulation that happens within families. I spoke at community centers about recognizing warning signs and protecting against relatives who might exploit trust and love for personal gain. Elder abuse isn't always obvious. I told audiences, sometimes it looks like concern, sometimes it sounds like help. The people who hurt us most are often the ones who claim to love us most. The property development deal that had motivated Amanda's timeline became my decision alone. Working with legitimate financial advisors who had no connection to Amanda's deception, I made conservative choices that honored Robert's original investment strategy while protecting our family's long-term security. I established an irrevocable trust that would benefit future generations while preventing any single person from gaining the kind of control Amanda had sought. The trust included specific provisions protecting against financial abuse and requiring multiple independent approvals for major decisions. My relationships with family and friends deepened in unexpected ways. Patricia flew in from Phoenix, apologizing tearfully for believing Amanda's lies and expressing admiration for my strength in fighting back. "I should have trusted my own judgment about you," she said. "You've never been anything but sharp and capable." At 65, I discovered that independence wasn't something to fear, it was something to celebrate. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, but had postponed during decades of marriage and motherhood. I took classes in photography and watercolor painting, joined hiking groups, and made new friends who knew me for who I was now rather than who had been in other people's lives. 6 months after Amanda's arrest, I received a letter from her in county jail. She was awaiting trial but wanted to write to me about misunderstandings and family forgiveness. The letter asked for financial help with legal fees and suggested that our problems could be resolved if I would just remember how much we love each other. I read the letter twice, then filed it with all the other evidence Sarah had collected. Amanda was still trying to manipulate me, still believing that motherly love could be weaponized against me, still unable to understand that her actions had consequences she couldn't charm or cry her way out of. I wrote back once, briefly, "Amanda, I hope you'll use your time in jail to think seriously about the choices you've made and the kind of person you want to be when you're released. I wish you well in learning from this experience, but I will no longer allow anyone to treat my love as weakness or my kindness as opportunity." The trial lasted 3 days. I testified about the systematic nature of Amanda's deception, the impact of being drugged without my knowledge, and the terror of discovering that my own daughter had been plotting to steal my life. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Amanda was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 3 years contingent on completing counseling programs and making restitution for financial damages. She would also be barred from any future access to my financial affairs or medical decisions. As I left the courthouse after sentencing, reporters asked how I felt about my daughter going to prison. I feel sad for the person she chose to become, I said, but am grateful for the opportunity to reclaim the person I've always been. A year later, I established the Jean Patterson Foundation for Elder Protection, using some of Robert's development profits to fund legal assistance for seniors facing financial abuse from family members. The foundation provides resources for detection, documentation, and prosecution of elder abuse cases, particularly those involving sophisticated emotional manipulation. I still live in the same house Robert and I shared for 20 years, but it feels completely different now. It's mine in a way it never was before, not just legally, but emotionally and practically. Every decision about the house, the garden, the daily routines, reflects my choices and preferences without consideration for what others might expect or demand. Sometimes people ask if I miss having Amanda in my life, if I regret the actions that led to her imprisonment. The answer is complicated. I miss the daughter I thought I had, the relationship I believed Wedge shared. But I don't miss being targeted for destruction by someone who saw my love as something to exploit rather than cherish. The most important lesson I learned isn't about recognizing manipulation or protecting against abuse, though those skills proved crucial. How did you handle the betrayal, and what did you learn about protecting yourself while still staying open to genuine relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize warning signs or find the courage to fight back. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might benefit from hearing about the importance of standing up for yourself, no matter your age. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about resilience, courage, and the power of refusing to be anyone's victim. Thank you for listening, and remember, you're never too old to fight for the life you deserve. Your voice, your choices, and your dignity matter, regardless of what anyone else might try to tell you.